podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, on this week's episode of Cardiff Central podcast, Dan and myself, we chat briefly about the news of Graham Belcher becoming captain, go over some pre-season, and give us a brief glimpse of Cardiff's upcoming season. And if you stay till right to the end, we even have some Wales women chat. I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central podcast. As ever, it's me, Harley, in the hot seat, and I'm joined today by Dan. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Finished work for annual leave for a couple of weeks today, so I'm full relax mode.
Excellent stuff, right? So there'll be no excuses for the Twitter going lax thing because Dan's got the time to deal with it all.
Well, I mean, I'm going to Mallorca on Friday, so there might be some elements of lax, but it depends how many watered down beers I have about the level of tweeting.
Yeah, unfortunately, no Carwin tonight. He's got other commitments. So I said no guest tonight, but we thought we'd just round up a few little bits of news, maybe give a bit of a pre-season preview, as next week we will have Lynn from CF10 and David Allen from Cardiff Board to take your questions, anything that you want to ask them about supporter engagement or any questions you want them to pass on to the WRU or Cardiff Rugby. So keep an eye out for that. Just message us through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, however you prefer to do that. So starting off with a big bit of news, which almost feels like it's not news because I think we both assumed it would happen. Liam Belcher has been named club captain for the season. So he obviously deserved the obvious choice, but one question I have been asked is, what does this mean for the likes of Evan Lloyd and Evan Daniel, who obviously both went on Wales tour this summer?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think, captaincy-wise, it's fairly a no-brainer. I mean, they didn't even really announce it. That's how assumed it was. They just sort of did a press conference and said, "Oh, he's the captain, by the way." So, it wasn't even like a big fanfare. I don't think there's necessarily a prerequisite that the club captain has to start every week. I think generally you accept that he'll be in and around the 23, and I think Belcher will be most weeks, but he was put up in front of the press and he spoke about the leadership group and name check likes of Josh McNally, Aled Davis, Callum Sheedy, Ed Byrne, and then I suppose you can add a couple guys who are already there, like Thomas Young's been around a while, Josh Adams is a senior guy now. So I think like sort of on-field captaincy wise, we got plenty of guys who can step in there. Probably the club captain is a bit more responsible Monday to Friday for sort of setting standards and dealing as well, sort of man management stuff where maybe it's not appropriate for the coaches to come into the changing room and for the captain to speak. And I think Belcher will say himself, he's not a shouter or a screamer on match day, so you don't lose too much in that sense for him not being involved. But I think he's great in terms of how people can talk to him. Whenever I think most people have come across him, I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him as such. He's a nice bloke. So I think that's what I would say on that. But I don't think it harms Evan Lloyd and Evan Daniel at all. I think we'll still see plenty of both, and Jockey will continue to switch them up as and when is needed and try and keep them all fresh as well for certain games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the player welfare aspect of it, actually having three hookers who you could argue all in their own way probably could start or be the bench guy or have a rest week. You don't want to change it too frequently, but it's nice having that as an option. And it also depends on what sort of role he sees these players. I mean, one important point I made on the WhatsApp group for Raptors, Jockey's got his plans for Cardiff. Whatever Gatlin's plans for Wales are is basically, they're secondary at the moment. Sort of moving on to that though, I think maybe it's time to talk a bit about the less good news. So Simon Thomas released an injury list. So a couple of people we know, Talupi Falato still a couple of weeks out, Thomas Young, Theo Cabango, a few others picked up knocks. Ben Thomas and Ez Bevan sort of being told that they should be ready for the first league game, but are going to miss the game on Thursday. Bad news about Roy Jennings, who looks like he could be out for a few weeks. After was it 11 minutes against Ealing, which sort of leaves us light at 12. So I think you know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah. So suddenly Grady appears in the end. Where we all decided we didn't really want him there, but yeah, I think to have your 3 senior 12s on the injury list is a bit of a killer early doors for Jockey. But hopefully Ben will be ready to go for Zebra. But it does sort of knock out of whack Jockey's ideal backs lineup of having a ball player in there at 12. It'd be interesting. We'll obviously get onto the preseason in a bit, but it'd be interesting to see if he's like hypothetically if Thomas doesn't make it, whether he would go with Grady in that first game against Zebra at 12, or whether we might see a little bit of Tina Stabia there against Bath on Friday. If I think we're expecting Grady to start, but if towards the end of the game you might slot Tinas in, or whether he trusts Steph Emmanuel enough to put him in there in the league game, but. Yes, I think it's not like you expect. There's always injuries. You're never injury free in professional rugby now. I think having what are we? I think we're about 8 on the injury list at the moment, which a squad of 47. I think Jockey said today is not too bad percentage wise, but it's just a bit frustrating that it's Falatau, Young, Bevan, Thomas, Beetham, all internationals. Alex Mann as well, another international, and then Theo Cabango, who maybe would have been an international, but for his injury, and Rory Jennings, who's very, very new. So, yes, there's a couple of key guys and then a couple of similar positions. But overall, hopefully, if we can get sort of 4 or 5 of them back for the start of the season, and then Falatau and Cabango, hopefully before autumn internationals with Jennings as well, then at least when we do pick up a few knocks, inevitably in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season, those guys will be ready to come back in quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, but I mean, all squads have injuries. It just always seems to be the way of Welsh teams that we all get injuries in one position.
Yeah,
which is the thing that screws us. I feel like it was second rows for the Ospreys last season and back rows for the Dragons. Moving on, so we'll just go on to a little bit about the Ealing game. I said I haven't watched it. I've only seen the things. One thing that did stand out though was we seemed to be doing quite well until sort of the last 20 minutes, which is a bit of a red flag from last season. And it was the fact that the 4 tries we conceded were pretty much all rolling ball, which brings up 2 issues. One, our maul defence probably isn't quite where it needs to be, and 2, discipline again this season. But I know you can. I know with preseason games you can't really draw too much from it, but it is a little bit ominous.
Yeah, I mean, results wise, I think we've all seen Cardiff win plenty of preseason trophies and absolutely fail to capitalize on that in the first few weeks of the new season. So I don't mind whether we win or lose. It was, I think, the nature of that. What do they score? 2 or 3 tries in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes will be a little bit disappointing. But there's all sorts of caveats around. Ealing had quite a competitive sort of conditioned game against Bristol the week before, so they'd had a bit of stuff under their belt. Their team was pretty strong throughout, whereas obviously we had a lot of young guys in there. Tom Bowen, Steph Emmanuel, we had Josh Thomas playing up from the rags. 11 guys making their first appearance for the club in the match day, however many it was, 26, 27. So I think there's plenty to take from it, but the highlights that Ealing put out, the attack looked pretty sharp, considering particularly the inexperience of the halfbacks, and then with Emmanuel coming on after 11 minutes, so you had Johan Mulder making one of not many senior professional appearances above the Currie Cup. You had Josh Thomas, who is technically a semi-professional player at this point, and Steph Emmanuel, who has only recently turned 18 and I think probably has only played 4 or 5 80-minute matches of rugby in his life. So it's that in that sense to go and be competitive is pretty good. More defense-wise, watching the clips, I had to watch them back in a bit more detail, but I fancied maybe there's an element of Cornel Van Zyl trying to do something a bit different with how we were defending the Moors. I think if you look at how we've defended them or attempted to defend them in the last few years, not always been successful, but we've tended to kind of work guys around the flanks of the maul and almost pull it back rather than counter the drive, which some teams do use quite effectively. The Springboks sort of go that way on occasion. Whereas it seemed like against Ealing, we were going full on, just try and drive them back, or like going head to head with it, not so much of that technical element. So maybe that's what Van Zil's trying to put in place, a little bit more of a hard edge. We're just going to take you on up front rather than try and be a bit sneaky and work around the side and disrupt it that way. But if that's the case, it'll take a bit of time to bed in, and with a couple of new guys in that pack as well. Josh McAnally was in there. A couple of the younger props involved as well. So not massively concerned at this point, but as long as things pick up. But what I do like is that we got the try bonus point, so we're keeping up the losing bonus point thing as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah, it says one of the things, preseason games don't necessarily mean anything. Jamie was pointing out on the wrap on Monday, which I think Lee will put a card on for the YouTube listeners for you to catch up and watch if you want to listen to that. Dragons were unbeaten pre-season last year, and they had that season.
Yeah.
So so I think it's not too much. So looking ahead to Bath, what do you want to see? Obviously, it looks like we might be having Mason Grady starting at 12, but is this the sort of game where we're looking at more close to as first a team as possible, or do you think it's still going to be a bit more of the wider squad?
Yeah, Jockey said in his press conference that they've put out today that there'll be a couple of the Wales guys come back in. He name-checked Mackenzie Martin and Cam Winnett, obviously Mason Grady as well. I suspect we'll see a couple of the other new faces. Aled Davis maybe coming in at 9. Be interesting to see if Sheedy plays any part. Obviously, he's had injuries and a bit part. Oh, go on.
I mean, Jockey did say in the press conference that he is hoping for Sheedy, which says to me maybe he's a bit 50-50 and maybe the bench.
Yeah.
Maybe the bench, and maybe we're looking at starting Tinas with, I don't know, maybe having Josh Thomas coming in for Sheedy at last minute.
Yeah, I suppose he could name Thomas there. I think he said he's going to do 26-27 again, didn't he? So they've got a bit of space on the bench there. I thought the other element of it actually is I'm not too sure exactly what Bath are going to face, because they're playing us on Friday, but they're also playing Ealing on Saturday at the Rec. So they're obviously splitting their squad in half for the weekend. So it might be a bit of a changed up side from them, but. I think it'd be slightly closer to first choice. Obviously, injured guys still a bit unavailable. Seb is still suspended. But which I
thought we said he was going on the Wales tour and got rid of all those.
I don't think we smuggled him into Australia in the end. It'd be interesting to see what props start. Azarati obviously didn't travel to Australia in the end after hurting his back against the Springbok or Bokbak. But if he's fit and Domachowski, then the front row could be quite competitive with the Evan Daniel and Evan Lloyd possibly coming in there. But yeah, I think closer to the first team and a step forward from Ealing is basically what you're looking for. The result still doesn't matter particularly, but as long as I think they come off the pitch and you kind of go, yeah, they're in a solid enough place that they can do a job against Zebra on that first game of the season, then that's pretty much all you can ask for on a summer Friday night. Hopefully the weather's quite nice and it'd be a good display of running rugby.
Absolutely. Before we go on, sort of move on to Zebra and the season ahead. If you do enjoy the podcast, please like, rate, subscribe to the YouTube and whichever you get your podcast providers for. And also, if you like the sort of content we do, the wider Rap family have different things. We're opening a pod on the SR, the Super Rugby Cymru, and the wider United Rugby Championship one. And also there is a women's rugby pod that's me and Hugh Catboy have we're slowly going to start drip feeding in. Anyway, so moving on to pre-season. So as you alluded to, first game Zebra at home, big one to set the tone.
It's massive, actually. I think it's weird to say, like, usually Zebra home, most teams sort of go, how much you're going to win by, or going down that sort of arrogant route. But I think it's one of Cardiff's biggest games for a few years, actually, because it it really is a tone setter for us. I think just generally we struggle with that arrogance against Zebra a little bit, and we end up looking quite nervous and getting quite tight, and end up sort of getting quite close to them. But with the narrative of last season and the positivity and the how many games we're so close, I think that there will be a lot of outside attention to turn close games into wins, but internally that they'll be aware that they're not going to suddenly go and win 10 games, but they'll certainly be looking to win more than the 4 of last season. And Zebra has to be one that you circle in big red permanent marker home on that first day. So if we go and win that one, it sets us up nicely for a run of a couple of games there. Scarlets twice, Glasgow home, Ulster home, a couple of games where we can win them. You're not definite to win them, but you would certainly say on our day we can win those 4 games. But if we lose to Zebra, I think it suddenly piles a lot more pressure on those ones. And if you end up then suddenly, played 4, lost 4, we're in quite a tough spot actually, where it's going to be difficult to cling to positives, and it's going to be difficult to motivate people to stay on that sort of bandwagon of, we're still building for the future, when realistically, results wise and potentially performances, if we have lost 4 of them, is maybe, if not taking a backward step, certainly plateaued. So I don't think it matters how we beat Zebra necessarily. I don't think anyone will remember that, but it's just win by any means basically on that first week, and then relax into the season from there.
Yeah, I think especially seems though how, arguably Zebra were lucky not to have won when we played the Melton Palmer last season. I mean, I know from certain people from the Italian circles, they were actually quite irritated that it was a draw. They felt like that was definitely when Zebra deserved to win. They are a team who tend to come out quite strong at the start of the season and then tail off. So, it's by no means a done 5 points. Moving on then, this sort of first block up to Christmas. I know we have the autumn international break stuff, so I've worked out the first 10 games in the URC, 8 of them at home, which annoying as ever. The waiting of this, but I just think it's one of the things in the league. So I think it's definitely this half of the season again is one where we've got to focus. Scarlet's home and away in weeks 2 and 4. We've got to break this hoodoo, surely.
Yeah, I fancy that those will be quite interesting games actually, because the Scarlets have obviously brought in quite a lot of new faces, particularly up front. They've stacked their props a little bit and kept hold of
another Aussie A prop.
Yeah, I did see that. And I don't think anybody really knows how good these other guys are going to be, particularly. But yeah, I think that we're not too sure exactly how the Scarlet's going to, without knowing these players, it's hard to tell whether they're recruiting to a certain style of play or whether they're just generally looking to bolster. They kept hold of, Fafita and Lausey, where people thought they might have headed off last season as well. So on paper, they've got sort of experience-wise as individuals, quite a good squad. But I think the Scarlet's problem over the last few years has really been, continuity of coaching and what their style of play is, and putting that out on a regular basis. So if we can get our top guys on the field against them, I think when we played them down there last season, obviously they had a few internationals available and ours were rested because we played them against Dragons the week before. And then at our place, I thought actually we were better than them for large parts of the game. Obviously, the Ellis Jenkins red card was a bit of a killer, and it's difficult when you get a red card in the first half to go on and win that. So, yeah, it's not like a Dragons against us scenario. I don't think necessarily, but it's certainly one where we just need just 1 or 2 little bits of luck on the day, and we can get back to winning over them. But it would be, you look at how we can improve on our 4 wins. Let's say Zebra at home, Dragons home and away, and then you got to be looking at the other Welsh derbies, seeing if we can pick up stuff from Scarlets and Ospreys, see if we can pick up from sort of the slightly lesser South African or Irish sides, or see what we can do against the Scots, who are a little bit hot and cold. But yeah, I think that this first block is so crucial. We said it before when looking at the fixtures, that the second half of the season absolutely reeks for Jockey. And so, yeah, if we can pick up a few wins in that first half of the season, that would be massive for us.
Right. Yeah. So thinking ahead. So in this first block, we've obviously got our first two Challenge Cup games as well. So we're away to Lyon, which is an absolutely fantastic city. And then we'll be hosting the Cheetahs, which would be a bit of a blast of the past for me. Reminds me of the Pro 14 gone by. But what are you looking forward to in terms of like challenge? We'll move away from the RC, but we'll go Challenge Cup because this is a competition we historically do quite well. Which would be good for us.
I thought Toby Booth said about for the Ospreys that they were targeting it. I think all four Welsh sides should really. Our group, Lyon, French sides invariably don't take it massively seriously. So there's a chance to get one over on them. We've gone there and won before. We won in Lyon when we last won the Challenge Cup. So Cheetahs, they're playing in the Currie Cup now, not to diss the Currie Cup as a competition, but it's obviously a step below your URC and your top leagues. So you'd hope that we could get a win from that. Is it Perpignan, the other away side?
Yeah.
Obviously,
once again, no French side wants to come to Cardiff.
they're a side that maybe is going to be a little bit relegation threatened in the top 14 potentially. So
also, that'll be round about that time. They'll probably have a better idea of whether or not they actually have any chance of. It's harder to probably not qualify for the knockouts.
But if a French side cannot qualify, they will not qualify. So, and then hopefully it's done and dusted by the time Connacht come round in that last one. Then, but I always back us to be Connacht at home. To be honest, like they're usually good games. So it's not an easy one, but that's a one where you'd look at and think, Cardiff are favourites at home to Connacht at least usually. So. And then once you get into the knockouts, it's anyone's game, and that's all that matters really. It doesn't matter too much about whether you're home, away, or what. I can't even really remember the exact format off the top of my head now. But
it'd be nice to do it. It'd be nice to do a Leinster and home draw all the way though. If we
is that possible
seeded,
these days?
First or second seed, home draw all the way. Whether that happens, I don't know.
It would be great to get back into the European knockouts though, because that is one of my favorite weeks of the year. That round of 16, the quarterfinals and stuff, the build up to that, they're so good, and obviously the Challenge Cup comes a bit more to the fore then as well. It's a bit forgotten about when the Champions Cup's on with the pool stage and stuff, which is fair enough. It is second tier, but once it gets to the knockouts and everybody gets a bit more of a fair share of the coverage, they are really good weeks to be involved in.
I'm good because I missed the last home European knockout we had against Sale because unfortunately my wife had to go in the hospital that day. But
it's selfish
of fine. But it's a bit of I really want to go to that game. Anything you want to highlight on the preseason? Any sort of like predictions that you want to go on?
What for? As in how we're going to do in the first block of games?
Yeah.
I figured out a points total in mind. I'll bring it up now for the first run of games, which was, I think, about 24 points, somewhere around there, would be a good. That's up until is it Sharks? I think we're home to in the last game before the Six Nations at the end of January, and I think if we get 24 points, which is sort of roughly. Yeah, 4 or 5 wins and a couple of losing bonus points and stuff on the way, and then a couple of good results in the Challenge Cup as well. I think that's a pretty good return at that point of the season, and it basically then says, because I'm not going to say that we're going to get the playoffs or anything in the URC. I think that we've got to be realistic that we played well last season and we were close in a number of games. We're not suddenly going to go from a fair way off it to bang up in the top 8, but if we give ourselves a fighting chance of being in and around that sort of 9, 10, 11 spot come the end of January in the Six Nations, when we play those tougher games, then go away to Ireland and go away to South Africa and stuff. There's no real pressure on us at that point. That we can just go out, give it a shot, see if we can, how many losing bonus points we can pick up. If we can nab a win here or there, great. And just sort of cruise to the end of the season then, and what will be. So I think that's that if we can get up to 24, 25 points, then that's a pretty good return from that first long old slog from end of September to the end of January.
For me, I was thinking probably I'd like a minimum of 6 wins.
Yeah,
I think because I think pretty much all the home games are winnable. Apart, Glasgow and Ulster maybe not so much, but it depends on what the Sharks end up doing this season. But I feel like if this is a time for us to sort of almost do a Benetton and get as high at the table as we can, and then knowing that second half is over then.
Yeah.
But 2 out of 2 for the Challenge Cup, I quite like both. I said now all the Challenge Cup, so it'd be done by Sharks. So I say I'd like to qualify sort of like first or second in pool.
Yeah.
Give us a decent maybe avoid a Champions Cup side until quarterfinal, semi-final time. Would be nice. So a couple of other preseason predictions then. Of our new signings, who do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the squad?
Question. So from a purely rugby basis, I hope it's Sheedy. Not in a replacing even De Beer kind of way, but just the two of them working together, bringing us a slightly different dimension to the attack, and you can marry that up with Ali Davis as well, who I think will get a good amount of game time. And if we use him how I think we will, which I think most games early in that run of home games as well, we'll see Bevan start and probably Davis as the bench option. And I think that could be the difference between the narrow losses and the narrow wins, is that you bring a guy like Ali Davis on, who has experienced Wales international, 150 odd games, and been at Sarries, and his kicking game's solid, his game management's really good. He is sort of the Lloyd Williams replacement that we didn't particularly know that we needed at the time, but last season became apparent that we do need somebody like that. So I think the two halfbacks, Davis and Sheedy. But then from a leadership point of view, I think McNally could be a really good pickup, and what he can offer that pack. Just dragging a couple of the young guys, Alex Mann, Mackenzie Martin, even like Teddy and a couple of the younger props, if he can sort of haul them around the pitch and get them sorted as well, that'll be really good from a not so much an off-field perspective, but a leadership perspective.
Yeah, I think you're still mine. I was probably going to, I reckon McNally. But then again, I mean, I don't think any of us thought De Beer would be as key for us as we thought last year. So it just shows, his preseason predictions. I think a couple of fun ones. Who do you think is going to be top point and top try scorer for the season?
Top point scorer is an interesting one, because we've got quite a few kicking options now, haven't we? With Sheedy, De Beer, and Thomas. I'm gonna stick with De Beer. I think second season a bit more confident off the tee, and with I think he's probably but no, Beetham's got the long boot as well, isn't he? But no, I think Sheedy De Beer just about, and also just because of his unbelievable resilience and consistency, just doesn't seem to get hurt or doesn't seem to tire, just seems to keep going. So him for points. And then try scorer, a couple of the obvious answers, probably Grady, but I don't know. Obviously he looked sharp on Saturday, 2 well taken tries, so I'll whack a bit of Gabriel Hamer-Webb on there for top try scorer.
I was wondering when you're gonna get your Cardiff crush into the conversation. I was gonna go very Route 1 following the trends of rugby and say Belcher, but
yeah, I mean, if we can get a driving more sorted, it doesn't matter if we can't defend them then, if we're just going to score more than the other team, so that would be good.
Well, our driving more's been pretty good. That's one of the consistent things of Welsh teams at the moment, is the driving more's really good. It's just that the lineouts are shocking to get them driving more. For me, point scorer, I don't know. I know what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Ben Thomas take that a bit more and just free up De Beer. But I mean, it could just be, if De Beer's like, no, I'm still points kicker, then I mean, top point score is always a bit of a dull one, because it's usually whoever your main goal kicker is. Any other preseason bits?
No, I don't think so. No, I was watching a couple of clips of for some player pieces the other day, and I was just thinking like it's quite sunny at the moment. Obviously, weather's been all right the last week or two, and I was watching. I can't remember, it was a Premiership game, Saracens against somebody, and it looked absolutely freezing at the Stone X, and I just thought I cannot wait to be freezing and to be huddled on the Arms Park terrace again. I am looking forward to it now after a long old summer and what was quite a slog of last season in the end with that last run of games which seemed to go on forever. But I'm looking forward to rugby being back now.
Yeah, absolutely. So one other bit of thing that's come out is, despite WRU's best efforts to bury the game and pretend isn't happening, Wales women are playing Scotland Friday night as well. So that'll be up at what are they calling it? Is it still the Hive or is it some other nonsense name?
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, so just quick preview for that. So this is a very much changed 15 from what you probably perceive the best team is. So no Alex Callender, no Hannah Jones, who's just come back from honeymoon. Start for emotionally sponsored pod person of the pod, Molly Reardon. Starts Kate Williams. But what do you make of the side so far?
Well, just on the coverage of the game, I can't avoid a dig at the WIU. I just think it's so poor. Like, can you imagine there was like a men's game warm up for like a competition, or like say the Springbok game at Twickenham in May, which wasn't even our home game, and that they don't name a squad. We haven't had a squad announcement at all for these games. They don't do any like the only social media post they've had is like, oh, it's game week, and then a sort of a graphic showing the game. There's been no coverage of training, no pictures, no videos, no any content pieces with any of the players. Like that would never happen for the men's team. So ultimately, you have to call out sexism on that, because it's just there's no equality between the two teams at all. Like they're basically putting the women's team on a lesser scale of, oh, we're not really interested in that, so we're just not going to cover it at all. So WRU covering themselves in glory again, and go back to the Rafferty report and all that stuff. They just never learn. But the game itself, yeah, I saw Johan Cunningham speaking in the media today, and they were asking him about contract negotiations, and it seems some players maybe haven't quite signed up to their next 12 months of Central professional contracts. So maybe that's had he denied that it had an impact on team selection, but it seemed like it had an impact on team selection, to be honest. But yeah, there's a lot to like. Yeah, we've mentioned Molly Reardon. It'd be interesting. Obviously, she's great in open play and over the ball defensively. Former scrum half, so she's got a great pass on her. But it'd be interesting to see how her line-out throw-in has come along after her exploits earlier this year. Gwennon Hopkins gets to start at 8, who we're all massive fans of as well. Kira Bevan, captain, is a good nod, I think. I don't think there'll be many people who disagrees that she should be a great leader on that pitch. And I'm looking forward to just seeing a bit of something fresher in that 13 jersey. Meg Webb is slightly different from Hannah Jones in that she's probably not as physical and not maybe footballing slightly different qualities off the boot, but she's a bit quicker and a bit more gives you a bit more of an outside running threat as well, which I think Wales have lacked a little bit in midfield over the last year or two, and hopefully then her bringing a bit of pace there, complementing Karen Lake's more directness at 12, will open up a bit more space for back three with, Jenny Hesketh looked a lot more comfortable at test level against Spain in that qualifier back in May, June time, whenever it was. And it's great. I think Jazz Joyce coming back in is a big boost as well, because she could quite comfortably have just said, well, I've just done an Olympic 7 cycle. I'm going to go and whack my feet up somewhere now. But I think it's good for the environment of the Wales women's side that she wants to come back in, and it's good for it reflects well on her that she wants to come back and pull the jersey on again and help us compete in, well, ultimately these are warm-up games for WXV2 at the end of the month. So.
Yeah. So I mean, the women's wrap will probably go into more depth with the women's wrap, but just your quick thoughts on that. WXV2 probably the right place for Wales.
Yeah, I think it sets us up nicely for, it's the start of the World Cup, 12 months now. So I think if they can obviously play in opposition that is still challenging, that there'll still be tough games in WXV2, but more competitive on our level, gives us a chance to see where we are and hopefully get a result or two under our belts, take a bit of momentum into Six Nations, and sort of make amends for obviously what was a poor Six Nations last time out, and then carry that momentum through into the World Cup. Then that's sort of an ideal scenario for Johan Cunningham, rather than, I think, WXV1 and as we did last year, losing all momentum and suffering loss after loss. Then that would have been a tough one to take into the World Cup. And then WXV3, I'm not sure how much we realistically would have learned about individuals or about Wales as a team. So yeah, WXV2 the right place, and it's up to the team now to make the most of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick reminder, I've completely blanked on the preseason game that's going to be at Dave Parade. I believe that's next Saturday. It might be the Saturday after. Apologies against.
It is. It's a Friday. Wales are playing Australia. It's the same day as Cardiff play Zebra. So if you're not fancying that, go down to Dave Parade instead.
Yeah, there is a very slight temptation to go listen to that, because at least it puts me further on the path to Devon. Yes, Wales Australia, who will be our first opponents in WXV on the 28th of September. So we basically play the same team twice, with the only difference being after a week we're both travel down. Then we play Italy, weirdly. I don't know, I think it's just the way they've set up the pools and the seeding, before finishing up playing with the Sakura 15. Oh, if you're not familiar, that's Japan's women's side, on the final week of the tournament. And then usually what happens is you have a play, depending on where you're ranked, you have a playoff, and that'll be against someone in the other pool. I think that's everything covered for this week, I believe.
Yeah, just a quick one, not a huge amount of news and stuff, but good check in with where we are. New season tantalizingly close.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you want to plug from the Cardiff Rugby Life blog?
No, I just got the last few new boys threads, and then I'll do a mega tweet with the links to all of them. But other than that, no, it's just onto, the Rags start a week Saturday in Super Rugby Cymru away at RGC, and then into the firsts against Zebra.
Yeah. So yeah, if any of you are at Bath, I'll catch you there. If not, we'll hopefully keep singing. We might see you, or at the very least, we'll be chatting to you throughout the season for our podcast form. Good night, all.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels, or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.